Hello and welcome to People in Profit. I'm Pellegrin. Coming up this week, we'll discuss the education crisis hitting Ukrainian refugee children all around Europe. The millions that have left the country, less than half are getting the schooling they need, with wide-ranging economic consequences. In Brazil, the recurrence of extreme flooding is making it harder and harder to run a business, underlining the devastating economic impact of climate change. And in neighboring Argentina, Javier Milei's libertarian cost-cutting policies are applied, forcing soup kitchens to clean out their pantries. As a result of the war in Ukraine, millions of Ukrainian children have been scattered around Europe. These young refugees saw their education heavily disrupted, with only between 30 and 50% of them enrolled in schools in their host countries. In Poland, for instance, the country that has received the most Ukrainian refugees, over 2022 and 2023, there were over 300,000 displaced Ukrainians of school age. Only 134,000 of them were enrolled in primary or secondary education, meaning about 56% of school-age refugees in Poland are outside the local educational system. NGOs have stepped in to try and maintain a sense of continuity for the displaced, ensuring that they get the same opportunities in life as their peers. Educational nonprofit JA Europe and UNICEF have teamed up to do just that, offering 1.9 million hours of training and education over the course of the last year across 14 countries. Well, for more on this, let's speak with Salvatore Nigro, the CEO of Junior Achievement Europe. Thank you for being with us on People in Profit.
Definitely, it's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Well, the war in Ukraine doesn't seem any closer to ending, meaning that more permanent solutions need to be found to guarantee that children, refugees, have an education. What could be the consequences if the situation remains as it is, and specifically the economic consequences for the host countries?
Well, we moved from humanitarian assistance across Europe, from food and shelter, to those over 5 million refugees, you say, that get out of Ukraine and went through different European countries. But one thing is that their educational path, especially of the young people, has been disrupted. Of course, they could bring some of their clothes, some of their things when they're going into the hosting countries. But it's equally important for them to bring the educational background in order that this educational background would be then reinforced in the hosting countries. One of the main issues that we faced across Europe was that the Ukrainian refugees were not only in one class. They were spread across different cities, across different schools. Language barriers was one of the main issues that we find out for their integration into the class. Very, very few teachers could speak, obviously, Ukrainian, or could provide any kind of teacher and any kind of training also in English. So if you add to that, this is in the moment that you are youth, you really want to change society, you are productive, you're optimist. But if you leave everything behind, you need also your self-esteem, self-confidence to be pumped up, to be pushed up. So that's why at JA, together with UNICEF, we launched a program called Uplift that reached out over 300,000 young refugees in different hosting countries to provide them with entrepreneurship education program, work readiness programs, and financial literacy. It goes beyond the problem just of humanitarian assistance, because they can contribute actually to the economy of the host country if they're not going back to Ukraine in the next future.
Yes, in the long run, what's the impact here in the long run when we talk about reconstruction once the war is over with Ukraine? What's the impact there?
Well, definitely there has been a brain drain. If you can imagine, especially young girls who had fled the country where they were younger than 18 years old. So there's been a huge brain drain from Ukraine, these active populations, towards other European countries. But if they are not going back, what kind of solutions we can offer in order to continue the educational path, but also making sure that their skills are utilized? So let's start with what Ukrainian refugees, in our experience, when we serve over 6 million young people every year in Europe, what they excel. Well, we found out that those Ukrainian young refugees excel in AI and now in general AI and on digital skills. So definitely, while on one side you have European, especially Western European countries suffering a huge shortage of talent, we are seeing that the Ukrainian refugees can definitely support that and can be integrated into the economy of the different countries.
And do you
On the
have
other
a
side,
specific example of that you can provide us that you've seen?
yeah, for instance, one of our program, which is Education, Entrepreneurship, and AI for Youth, which is just the World Economic Forum has selected as one of the 8 best cases in the world, and that we are implementing in different European countries, and we're also implementing it in Ukraine, together with Intel and together with, for instance, the European Institute of Technology.
And going back to that issue of the education gap for those displaced school children or school children who are out of school, what do host governments need to do to step up here?
Well, it looks like the attention that the government used to have just in the aftermath of the explosion of the war, it's going down. So a lot of focusing on what's happening in Ukraine, important, absolutely important. We are actually operating in Ukraine, we are operating in Chernihiv, we are operating in Lviv, we are operating in Kiev, where our JA Ukraine is doing a tremendous job in training young people for the work for the future or to become entrepreneurs. But at the same time, what we see that government are paying less and less attention on the integration of the Ukrainian refugees into their school system. Well, I have some good news. The good news is that we saw that when there is a significant support, not only in the education, but the whole community level gets around to engage the young Ukrainian, and we have some great examples, for instance, in Italy, as I can just mention one of the countries, the young Ukrainian becomes very active in providing opportunity not only for themselves, but also for their community around.
Salvatore Nigro, you are the CEO of JA Europe. Thank you so much for speaking with us on People in Profit.
Thank you very much, Ian.
Well, businesses across southern Brazil are struggling to count the cost after some of the worst flooding in the region's history. Agriculture and manufacturing industries have been brought to their knees, leaving businesses desperate for state aid. The extreme weather left at least 169 people dead and hundreds of thousands displaced. Andrew Hillier takes a look at how businesses are coping.
This is what's left of Alexander Becker's crop. Ruined by unprecedented flooding, the farmer is still struggling to reckon with its economic costs. He's even contemplated pulling the plug on his business.
We're already crunching the numbers and we may have to sell some animals, get rid of some of our herd. Or if the winter doesn't go well, given how things are going this year, we can't even rule out the possibility of, who knows, stopping production.
According to a local industry federation, the flooding, which lasted a month, had an impact on 9 out of 10 factories across the state of Rio Grande do Sul. Land has been severely damaged, with large landowners losing up to $5 million in total. Infrastructure has also taken a hit. Bridges have collapsed and heavy rains have washed away roads. This is the 4th time in the past year that the region has been hit by extreme weather. Some businesses, like the Fontana Company, had already put in place contingency plans to prepare for the worst.
We successfully removed a lot of things, such as inventory, equipment, and electronic components from our machines. It looked like that allowed us to limit the damage this time around.
Local industry groups have urged the government to step in as soon as possible. They say the first step to helping businesses get back on their feet is to rebuild roads and bridges. The federal government has already announced a series of measures to help industry cope with the disaster, including $2.9 billion worth of loans at low interest rates.
To Argentina now, where Libertarian President Javier Milei's drastic spending cuts are hurting those most in need. Since he came to power in late December, funding to social organizations that run thousands of soup kitchens in the country has been cut, leaving them without any supplies or government aid. Our correspondents Mathilde Guillaume and Mathis Moussa show us how that's impacted the country's poor, a population that's seen its ranks growing in the past few years.
For 25 years, Father Toto has been doing social work in Shantytown 21, located in the south of Buenos Aires. But since Javier Milei became president, the 8 soup kitchens he runs have been cut off of food assistance from the government. Just like the other thousands of soup kitchens in the country, they now only run thanks to private donations and volunteers. Every day, they have to keep working with a little bit less.
Recently, I had to split a packet of pasta in half in order to share it between 2 soup kitchens. It had never happened before, not even during the worst crisis. We literally have to scrape the bottom of the barrel.
But demand for food keeps on growing. Inflation, now an interannual rate of 289%, has destroyed the purchasing power of Argentinians, which had already been battered by many years of crisis. Those who could keep their head above water, like Miguel, are now drowning. These past 3 months, he has been forced to come here to get his food.
All the prices have gone up so much, I can't make ends meet anymore, so that way at least I save a little bit of money.
Without food to hand out, dozens of soup kitchens have already had to shut down. These women contributed their own money to buy the food for this activist distribution center. But in almost 6 months of this new far-right administration, no answer has been given.
It's inhumane to gamble like this with the hunger of the people.
An Argentinian court has recently forced the government to distribute 6,000 tons of food stored by the former administration, an amount insufficient compared to the magnitude of the food crisis in the country.
That's all for this week. If you'd like to watch some of our previous editions, you can check out our website or app, or even the podcast platform of your choice by searching for People and Profit. In the meantime, thank you for watching and stay tuned.